The world young people are inheriting is one bad headline after another. Climate collapse, debt, division, even corruption. All while powerful people attend lavish parties and build golden ballrooms, ordinary people can't even afford to pay rent or eat food. It's hard to plan the future when it feels like the future has already been sold. So how do you keep your dreams alive when the world's on fire? That's what we're going to talk about today on Off the Couch. Welcome to Off the Couch. Growth doesn't happen lying down. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, psychologist, here with producer Brian Gomez.
Hey, how are you guys?
And we have Tony Sweet on the board. Hi, Tony.
Hello, hello.
Well, before I completely trip up, we have a very special topic today. Basically, how to stay motivated while the world is burning around us. And that came out of a discussion that we had after our previous show. Why is America so angry right now? And that was what it brought up some concerns for you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we all are kind of lost in what's happening. And I mean, for the younger generation, this is kind of like a new thing that we're experiencing, you know? I mean, you mentioned how there's different things in, history that happen that are a lot worse or almost the same, but like, we get through it and, here we are. This is proof that we can, but it seems kind of like impossible at this time. Like, how do we even focus on like our careers, or like, I'm worried about the younger generation. That's like, what are they dealing with? Or like, are they even able to like dream or have like aspirations? Or, I don't know what's going on there.
Well, I don't know either in many ways. I do know that in other ways, we've been here before, maybe in smaller ways. I don't want to downplay the seriousness of the world that we're living in. But in other ways, we've been here before, and I want to talk about that. But you're not alone in feeling that. Brian, actually 58% of young adults say they lack meaning in their lives. The future feels canceled for them. So it's really kind of a more common feeling. But there is hope out there, and that's what we're going to talk about. And there was a study in 2025 out of Australia, just to kind of give you a heads up, that hope can be shaped, and it does often come out of crisis. And if there's not a crisis right now, I don't know what else is, but I think things can get much, much worse. And I hate to say that. It really came up for me too, because I was really horrified that the White House, the most powerful people in the nation, not only are they building a golden ballroom to be named after the president, they're tearing down the White House without doing any kind of clearance or any kind of historical pass-through. I mean, it was just absolutely atrocious and a great emblem of what's going on in the United States. But the government is shut down. SNAP benefits are cut off. That means the poorest of the poor aren't going to get their food. Federal government, federal workers aren't going to get paychecks. They're having to work sometimes without pay, like in the cases of the TSA agents or the air traffic controllers and many others in there. But they're having to work without pay, which means they can't do another job to get money during that time. I mean, it's really kind of scary. And the White House has a great Gatsby theme party at Mar-a-Lago for Halloween, which just represented excess, the roaring 20s. They all got dressed up. They all drank and had these dancing girls around in this kind of opulence and bacchanalia. And it was so horrible to see such a thing, because I had to think, what the hell is going on? And especially that they picked a Great Gatsby theme. And I'll talk about the Great Gatsby because I thought that was so ironic. I thought, has nobody at the White House read the Great Gatsby? Tony, did you read the Great Gatsby?
We had to.
We had to. We had to in high school. Did you read it?
We had to, but I just watched the movie
instead.
Sorry,
we didn't have a movie. Oh my God. That's what being old is all about. You don't have a movie. I don't know. Did the movie? I don't know if the movie actually how close it was to the books. But the party was called "A Little Party Ain't Killed No One," and I'm like, wow, that's cold in the face of this shutdown. I looked it up. And apparently that's a song from The Great Gatsby, A Little Party Ain't Killed No One. Except if you watch The Great Gatsby, that's kind of exactly what happened. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure what they were thinking. But the main message of The Great Gatsby, this is F. Scott Fitzgerald, it's considered the greatest American novel, is that the American dream, especially when defined by the pursuit of wealth for happiness, so it's the pursuit of wealth so that you can be happy. That American dream is corrupt and it's unattainable. He illustrates that throughout The Great Gatsby. The themes of The Great Gatsby are the disintegration of the American dream, the corrupting influence of wealth and class, the corrupting influence of materialism and hedonism, that's pursuit of pleasure, and the inability to relive the past. So this was the irony of all ironies while they're partying. And the other image, what was the other thing that came up for you, Tony? Did anything come up for you? Any
About
other
the party
images?
itself?
Well, I mean, just like Nero fiddling while Rome burned. I mean, that was another image that came up for me. Or the misapplied quote to Marie Antoinette, "Let them eat cake."
Well, this reminds me of actually Rome at the end of the Roman Empire, how the corruption got so bad that it was the reason the Roman Empire completely failed. And it just reminds me so much of that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I was looking at the that they put Socrates on trial. Anyway, I mean, just like the sane people were actually held to account, and the people that were corrupt or the people that had the power ran it into the ground. Mm-hmm. It's really kind of a concern. Yeah, just to say the "let them eat cake." Do you know what that refers to, Brian? Yeah, Marie Antoinette is said, she didn't say this apparently, but when she was told, because of the just before the French Revolution, that the peasants were starving, because they didn't have any bread. That's what they said, they don't have any bread to eat. And she said, well, let them eat cake. That's what she's said to have said. And it's basically, let them eat brioche it was translated in French. It's a type of cakey bread, essentially. So she was kind of like, she didn't understand. She couldn't conceive of the fact that food didn't exist. It's just she thought one type of food didn't exist. Like, she didn't understand poverty. She just couldn't understand it. And so it's considered this completely out of touch and completely dismissive point of view, which is reflective of the greatest people, the greatest wealth out there. I think if I were in government, I wouldn't want to go to this party. But I'll bet at the same time they felt like they had to go. They had to show their faces at this party to maintain their power positions. But I mean, the look is terrible. All the while, the government is shut down, and they're refusing to even meet with the Democrats. The White House or the Republicans are refusing to meet with the Democrats. They're just sitting this one out. And SNAP benefits. I mean, I don't want to go into politics too much, but it's just kind of shocking this is happening in real life. SNAP benefits, they just said, no, we're not going to fund it anymore. They just, even though they have monies they could set aside to do it. And then 2 states had to take them to court. 2 federal judges said, you got to pay the emergency fund. So they're being forced to pay some of it. But they actually have other monies they could move around to pay the full benefits. But the government, the administration is saying no to that. So the level of cruelty to the poorest of the poor is unbelievable.
But are you really shocked about it at this point? Like, I mean, we've been hearing of all of this coming and all of this rolling out. Like, can we really be that shocked at how, like, they're behaving and everything that they're going after? Like, I know for some people it might be a shocker that this is happening or even able to happen in the United States of America. But I'm like, I've been seeing this like coming this way for a while. It's just taking, I think, people a little longer to like be like, oh my God, this is really happening, but it's been happening.
Well, I would say shocked but not surprised, and that's a saying we hear a lot, in the sense that it doesn't surprise me that they would be this cruel, but still shocking because we've not seen this level of cruelty ever before. We've never seen them cut off food benefits before. The government intentionally cut it off.
To their own people.
To their own people. The New York Times did an episode of The Daily, which is this audio thing they do, like a podcast, and they were interviewing people in West Virginia because West Virginia is the highest recipient of food stamps, of these SNAP benefits. So they went and interviewed people what the effect was on them, and it was heartbreaking to hear these people talk. And what was so interesting is West Virginia is primarily white. And what you keep seeing on things like Fox News, I beg you not to watch Fox News because it'll make you very upset, is they keep portraying that SNAP beneficiaries are minorities who are just selling their benefits and profiting off them. I mean, it's kind of horrific that they're doing that. But the reality is people that use these benefits typically need them to survive. So that's what really upset me.
Yeah, I've even seen like, I mean, the trends are horrible, but like social media videos of like people making fun of people that use Snap.
Oh my God.
That I'm like, this is a type of world we're living. It's fucking weird at this point.
There but for the grace of God. If you don't use Snap, there but for the grace of God, in the sense that, come on, folks, you could be in this position. Your parents might be in this position. You never know who's going to be in this position. And I think you're always just basically 1 degree away from it. I would challenge anybody out there to not have a friend or someone close to them, someone they know who doesn't use these benefits. I think it's in the 46 million, or it's like over 40 million people in the United States. That's like 15% of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say it. Like, we grew up with it when I was a kid, and there was just, with 5 kids, it's kind of a lot to handle.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I feel like it's a lot of people's situation, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to see people just going after such an important, but again, they've been doing that all year long.
You're right. And I think what's also interesting, and maybe Tony, you have a different point of view. You're a little older, Brian. I'm older than you, in the sense that we grew up in a world where even when things got bad, they still kind of held these pieces together. There were still some checks and balances going back and forth.
For sure.
That they pushed back. Like the Senate and Congress pushed back on the executive, the presidency.
Well, I mean, great example was it when Richard Nixon and Watergate, that it was the Republicans that said, Mr. President, we're not going to follow you on this. And that's when he resigned, because they were going to impeach him and remove him from office from doing that. So it shows you that, that's been 50 years ago, which is, actually I was just barely born, just a little kid, but still, and just that amount of time, how much it's changed, where, one of these days you should do one on cults, because honestly, this is a very cult-like following.
We will. It's a good point, and we'll have to do something like that. It's really concerning to me. I think for Brian, I think what really kind of alerts me is if I'm to put myself in the shoes of young people, they don't have that wider perspective and that wider expectation that the government needs to act a particular way. So they're developing a belief right now that all government is corrupt because one party, I'm sorry, I think there are good Republicans out there, but they're kicked to the side. Mm-hmm. Adam Kinzinger is a good example. I may not agree with him, or Liz Cheney may not agree, but they have integrity. Mm-hmm. And I read her book and I thought it was fantastic, actually. Liz Cheney's book. Did you read it, Tony?
I didn't read it, but I have to say I never thought I would agree with Cheney, but this was one where I jumped on board with her.
So, I mean, so you can have a differing point of view and be a person of integrity and trust. So I don't think it's party necessarily. I think it's corruption. It's like a cancer within the party. So I think that's the problem.
But then would you feel like if they still have integrity, do you think they should still be representing that side, or are they losing their integrity at that point? Because,
well, if they had integrity, they would do things like stand up to leadership.
yeah.
So that's what Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney did. They stood up to leadership. They said, we're going to do this. We're going to champion something else. And they made, that was the January 6 hearings. They made those bipartisan. And, I hate to be so blatantly political. That isn't my intention for this podcast. But I think it just, unfortunately, it's colored the world we live in such a stark way. Today's actually, the day we're recording this is election day. And so by the time this comes out, we'll have known all the outcomes of the elections. And, it kind of doesn't matter in some way, and it matters in every way. So it's a very interesting time with these elections. But I think it's the only chance the people have to have their voice really heard. Besides the protest, I think this is the other big thing.
Well, and then now I'm kind of wondering, like how you said that we're losing trust in just like government in general. But I mean, it's not just our government. It's happening all over the world that this corruption is like spreading and becoming acceptable and everything. Right. So like what happens after we have lost complete faith in our government? Like how does society move forward from that or bounce back?
You're actually saying something really interesting. There was an op-ed in today's New York Times by a guy named David French, and it was basically saying that it was like fortune favors the brazen, and these people who do the corruption out in the open, they get away with it because people are like, well, it must be okay, or he wouldn't do it out in the open. They literally say that. James Comer said that, I think, about Trump. Recently, he's one of the Congress people. I think he's a head of finance or something. And it's basically, I mean, that's what people think. If they do the corruption out in public, it's okay. And I think we've got to make that not okay. It's not okay to kill somebody either in public or private. It's just not okay, period. And it's not okay to steal someone's money in public or private.
But we are doing that.
I know. And even that, I'm like, I want to be corrupt now. I don't want to play by the rules anymore. If nobody else is playing by the rules, why am I? Or why are we all,
Because really, if you think about it, Donald Trump and his administration is killing people on boats,
that's true.
Drug dealers or not drug dealers. We don't know that. So they are killing people right in front of our faces. And he even said, we're going to kill them. Yeah. And so we can't deny that. And so I think also I think the world's being more corrupt even faster, and because the United States has always been the leader of stopping a lot of corruption.
We've been the world policeman. And now the police have gone amok.
It's true. Now it's like the door that has been kicked off its hinges and just said, oh, well, Donald's not going to stop us. So let's just go for it.
No, in fact, he'll reward it. I don't mean to like really dig this hole, but at the same time, apparently a January 6th guy that was, prosecuted for beating up a policeman, whatever, Donald Trump pardoned him, which he's allowed to do. So it doesn't matter that we, try to attack a policeman, but we're going to then, let him out of jail because that's politically advantageous. Well, he came up on other charges because apparently he went to go threaten another politician. I'm not sure, was it Obama or was it, Josh Shapiro? I don't know which politician he was going to threaten again. He went to threaten. In this case, I was like, of course, you let someone out who does something like that, they're going to repeat. But nonetheless, he went and repeated, and he's after another politician. Well, the Justice Department brought charges against that guy. What did they do? They relieved these Justice Department officials of their duty for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they were technically fired or just pushed off, but they had to suffer a consequence because they followed the law.
And that's kind of like another part that I'm like confused on how we navigate the world we live in right now, because it's like, okay, we want to stand up and we want to, you know, fight back on what's happening. But like some of our jobs rely on us not standing up or, you know, speaking out against that because of like either the clientele we're working with or, you know, it's kind of hard on like how you can even voice your opinion without losing work.
And I know that me saying these things so publicly, there are probably people who are going to listen to me who don't agree with me, or people who listen to me who might be a client or a past client, something like that, who would say, oh my God, I can't, and then lose all respect for me because but I believe in this country. I truly believe in this country. And I believe that we can pull through this, but we're in a very dark space and it's very, very upsetting to me. But we've been here before. I think I was thinking to Brian when he voiced this to me, I'm like, you know what we can talk about? We've been here before, because I remember when I was a little kid, I'm older than you, Tony. I remember sitting there and watching on TV every single day bodies coming off the plane from the Vietnam War. I remember neighbors being drafted to the Vietnam War. I remember them coming home and looking like shells of themselves after the Vietnam War. People were traumatized beyond all belief during that time, and the country was against them. I was just this little kid observing this stuff, and I remember being terrified that I was going to be drafted, and that was a reality until I was a teenager, that we didn't get out of Vietnam until a little bit later. I mean, maybe I was younger when we got out, but still the draft continued after that time. So I was really, really scared of being put into that. And the world looked like a very threatening place. And what really concerned me is some of the same people seem like they didn't care. Like if it didn't affect them, they didn't care. Like if they were older and weren't going to be drafted, they didn't care as much. Or if they were, some other kind of group that wasn't going to be drafted, they didn't care as much. And the people that were going to be drafted were very upset about this, about the war itself. And then
and
other
I agree
people.
with you. I agree with you that, that we who live in this era now, we feel like this is the darkest that America's been, but it hasn't. Because if you think about going through the Civil War, that going through World War I, World War II,
the bloodiest war of all. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even through the 60s with JFK being assassinated, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and then the Vietnam War, all within 10 years of each other. So that honestly, that we didn't live, many of us didn't live through that. So it was a very dark period. And I think we will get through it. I'm not for sure what America will look like on the other side. It's either going to be stronger, or it's going to be kind of like you said, of the Vietnam people, of a shell of what it once was. So
some people will be left in that position, I don't doubt.
Yeah.
And I think, there were other eras too. That there was about, that was during the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah. Then
the AIDS crisis came in the 80s. And the AIDS crisis was another incident where it was devastating to one community. This is mainly the gay male community during this time, but also to IV drug users, also to Haitian immigrants, also to hemophiliacs. They call it the 4-H Club, by the way. Homosexuals, Haitians, hemophiliacs, and heroin users.
Yeah.
That was kind of the fun little, I don't know why, but they call it 4-H. But basically that crisis, the president didn't even say the word. Didn't even say the word. Wouldn't even say AIDS. They wouldn't give money. They wouldn't do things. They wouldn't advance the drugs. I mean, it was a dark, dark time. And it was a really scary time, and people that weren't affected were turning their backs. So we had Americans turning their backs yet again, like those people at the Great Gatsby party, partying and having fun while there's destruction going on around them.
Or with the Germans too.
With Germans in 1930s, this is another. Yeah, it's actually what preceded the overtaking of Hitler. Germany was kind of like this super advanced, super party place. Like this is where everyone, it was very progressive, very future oriented, etc. And hate for immigrants that was the Jewish people. They hated them, and then took over, and then the Nazis took over and did a lot of the same things. And I'm not going to necessarily liken. We would have to do a point by point analogy, but I will say that there are a lot of echoes of 1930s Germany going on through our society right now.
Some similar tactics,
and similar concerns, and the similar
and similar behavior, like how we're saying that people are turning their backs.
Yeah,
if it doesn't affect them, then they're okay. And then that's my whole concern. It's like, is that how we move forward, where we just kind of focus on our own little life, and then I don't know, and that's why I'm kind of confused on how we do navigate this.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, Tony. You mentioned Watergate. I'll never forget the lady down the street, and when President Ford, who was the president that came, who was vice president to Nixon and was named president. The only reason Ford was even in the vice presidency is because Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, was pushed out because he took bribes. No, seriously. It was the most corrupt administration until the current one. I mean, it was just crazy how corrupt they were. But anyway, nonetheless, he got pushed out, and so did Nixon. So, I mean, things were at least, there was some check happening. And so we could kind of trust in this. A lot of people say an original sin was President Ford. I was a little kid. Now imagine this little 4th, 5th grade or whatever I was. And I remember the lady down the street saying, when President Ford pardoned Nixon, he said, well, the country needs it to move on. And as a little kid, I'm like, well, if he's not going to be punished for what he did, it's just going to happen again. Like, as a little kid, I remember being upset about this because it's like, this, of course, it's going to happen again. You don't just pardon someone who does a crime like that. And sure enough, that is what happened. Now, a lot of people can disagree with me. They say there's a need to move on. But I think sometimes moving on is knowing that appropriate steps were taken to know that you're protected. Not like, well, they can do it, but they're, they did good things, like they went to China. So, and he did do good things. Nixon did a couple of good things. He started the EPA. He's, in many ways, that's a great thing. But he did this corruption that ended up really destroying him. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if you can really. This is more than just corruption. I feel like what's happening at this point, That's why I'm like, yeah, there was a corruption before, and like you said, there were people that were, checking and balancing it all, but we don't have that now.
No. So, and I'm like reflecting on myself. I did not mean to go down these roads today, but I'm like, wow, I'm really upset about the government shutdown and about the poorest of the poor being forced to suffer because of these rich, F's in Washington who are just turning their backs. I think the look of it is horrific. I mean, I can't even imagine why this is acceptable.
And I think we're still just not seeing the full effect of it yet, because with the government shutdown, people are going to lose their jobs, lose their homes, become homeless. Even people that weren't on SNAP benefits are going to have to need those SNAP benefits at some point, which won't be around,
right.
I don't know. It's not looking great to bounce back from this. That's my only concern,
I wanted to offer you a message of hope.
Please.
And I'll get there. But I have to catch myself and say, oh no, I really went farther than I meant to go, or further, whatever, because I just I just realized I'm upset about what's happening. I'm very upset, and I'm upset. I don't like to see the least of us suffer. I hate it when people with disabilities are not given. I almost went after a woman the other day. Range Rover, of course, parks in a paraplegic parking space when there were other parking spaces available. It was just a very convenient parking space, but there were lots of other ones. She parks in the paraplegic parking space. She's wearing workout clothes, bounces out of the car, runs across the street to the coffee place. So it's not even the parking lot for the place. And she's going to get coffee. And I had to hold myself back to not say something, because I can say something in that particular regard. And I thought, hold it, you're don't be cool on this one. Be cool, because it's so egregious and so horrific. And I just didn't feel like dealing with her attitude at that moment. And it shocks me. It shocks me sometimes that people do things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I've also just kind of had to shut down recently. I think we talked about this on the last episode, how Americans are just a lot angrier. I mean, we have every right to be angry.
I guess I'm among them. My goodness.
Yeah, and it's just now it's gotten so bad to the point where we have to shut down instead of even engage. Where before it's like, oh, you can have hey, that's not cool. But at this point, it's like, hey, I'm gonna beat your ass, just because that you should know better at this point. I don't have the patience, and it sounds like you don't either, to even have that conversation.
I don't. Yeah. And I guess I didn't at that moment. If I were feeling a lot more grounded and sane, I probably would have said something and been able to hold my cool, but I didn't feel like I could in that moment. It just touched on something. I think because my brother dying, and all that, I'm a little even more sensitive about disabled people at the moment. But I really upsets me about the least of us being forced to suffer. And the callousness from those at the top. And you actually said something to me, Brian. You said, parties happening, da da da. And I said, well, of course that, that needs to go on. I just feel like the people who are in power, when there's a crisis happening, it is their job to not go to a party and to hunker down. Because if there were a war happening in the United States, they wouldn't be having a Great Gatsby party. But to be having a Great Gatsby party when people can't eat because of their actions is so callous and so cold. I couldn't believe it. And a ballroom, that none of us are going to be able to use. It's just shocking to me. So I did want to give you hope, Brian, but I'm talking against myself here. History teaches us, it really does. Out of the AIDS crisis, out of Vietnam, out of different crises, people have created art, music, movements. I used to say that the best movies are World War II. Out of World War II movies, the best books were the stuff that came out of Watergate and that era. I mean, there was some great stuff. And sure enough, this one will produce some great movies and great books. But hell, it's not something that we're going to be, waiting for. I think it's going to be for future generations to go, what the hell did these people do?
But I have a question for both of you guys. Because right now, the music sucks. The art is just stupid. And the movies are not doing great either. So was this also happening when all these bad, horrible events were?
It's interesting you say that, because in the 50s, whatever, 60s really had some incredible music come out. Incredible. And the 70s, I mean, people will argue there is a lot of good music that comes out of the 70s, but the 80s heralded a whole new music scene that's still popular to this day. The 80s music was phenomenal. So, yes, out of these dark eras do sometimes come good things. I'm wondering, I don't know why, and you can check me on this later. I'm wondering if folk music will have a resurgence because
I do like folk music.
yeah, and I feel like there's a room for it now, especially because stuff has gone so electronic and so produced that we need to get back to the basics. And I feel like that's my own feeling. I could be completely wrong, but I do believe music movements like that have a place right now.
But before they didn't have ChatGPT, so I'm really concerned. That's again, it's like yes, great points, but like in reality, I'm like ChatGPT is tearing that whole segment of like creatives down from like art, music. Like I don't know.
You're actually right, Brian. And we had fear around the internet when that just came in, and first people were like they had a lot of fear about it. But I think AI does hold a special threat that's very concerning. And it's concerning that we have a government that is just letting it run wild as opposed to saying, we have to get our arms around this. And, I'm sure they're getting nice payoffs. They're letting crypto run wild. I mean, there's some stuff running wild and people can argue that's a good thing. And but
we've seen all the movies and how that turns out. So I don't know.
But I do think right now it's important to find your community, to find purpose. And we'll talk about what I think purpose is actually one of the most important things you can do right now to start to instill hope. I will go over this psychology of hope, that to have hope for the future. This guy, C.R. Schneider, he has this hope theory, and I actually think it's nice. It makes a lot of sense. And basically, the hope isn't a feeling. It's a cognitive process. So it's not just like, oh, I hope you'll do well. It's a process built from three key elements. The first is that you have goals, a clear purpose in your life, clear sense of purpose, pathways. That means you find ways forward. And right now we can see all the places we can't get ahead, but it's trying to do the workarounds. It's like, dropping water and seeing where it goes. Is there a way through? And agency. That's a belief you can act. And I like to put things sometimes into fun little, things. I said purpose, pathway, and presumption. When you have a purpose, you see a pathway, and you have the presumption you can get through it. That's the agency. Like, I know I can. I don't necessarily see every way through, but I know I can. I have agency, and I'm going to find the pathway to get through because I want to get through. Schneider says that hope is not a wish. It's a belief that you can find a way forward and take it. Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is taking action even when success isn't guaranteed. That's courage too. And Viktor Frankl, he wrote The Man's Search for Meaning, which is a great book. It's like one of the heralds of existentialism. I think he also did He invented logotherapy, which is a psychotherapy based around meaning. It's not so different than many other types of therapy, but he really, really leans into the concept of finding meaning and purpose. Viktor Frankl says, those who have a why can bear almost any how. And he should know because he was a survivor in the Holocaust. And that's where he came up with these ideas. He was a psychiatrist who was put through the Holocaust, and he always kept his clear sense of purpose, and it kept him alive.
No, I like that. I'm just now, I'm like taking it in. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. I hope people can, shoot for that and have that type of hope and mentality. Because it is hard, especially if you're one of the groups that's being attacked by everything going on. I feel like it's hard to have that hope.
It is hard to have that hope. And I find myself, sometimes feeling
hopeless,
some difficulty. But let's talk about why hope sometimes feels impossible. There are some theories, and when you really look at these theories, they give you the way out. But one is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness, I won't go into the entire theory. This is Martin Seligman. It's basically that repeated failures, once you hit a wall so many times, you just want to give up. So even when you do have a way through, you don't try anymore. So the lesson from learned helplessness is you may hit a wall many, many, many times, but don't give up. That's basically the lesson from learned helplessness. Or maybe you can take a break and then get back.
Yeah, because I mean, and a lot of the success stories that you hear, it's like people are just, that's the biggest thing you hear, I think, that like they just keep working at it and working at it and working at it. And no, at some point it will land, you know, but you can't stop. I mean, we were having this conversation just before the show about it, you know, that even if you hit that plateau where you feel like you're not moving, it's stuck, like you're just kind of like lost on what to do now or how to try, but it's like it will land, you know. I like that.
The next would be not getting caught in what's called the existential vacuum. This is a concept. This was introduced by Viktor Frankl, the guy we talked about, the psychiatrist. And existential vacuum is a loss of meaning or direction. It's basically you're alive, but you don't know why. It's that constant questioning. But this is really, really relevant today because I think people feel this today, especially around social media and that constant comparison to heighten their own feelings of emptiness. Don't you feel sometimes empty looking at social media? I know I have. I know I went through a period of that. That's why I really limited it.
Empty in like what way though?
Well, just like, oh, yeah, I don't know that necessarily for me I don't measure up, but it was just sort of like, oh, I'm not doing anything. Oh, all these people are doing all these amazing things. And, they're all traveling X, Y, and Z. And it was more like, geez, I'm doing laundry.
I get that.
And I know the reality. I do know the reality. So please, I know the reality, but nonetheless, you see it in front of you this way.
And I feel like it's a bit harder living here in LA because it's different that you can see celebrities and like influencers doing all these things and you're like, oh yeah, like that's their job or whatever. But like we know people like in person that are doing these things, it's a lot harder when your peers are those people, and you're like, fuck, like I am not like taking a trip on a private jet or anything, it's just, and it's like crazy. That's not even what you're dreaming of, but now you're like, oh, I should be doing that,
Right. It's interesting because, I think that is right. We always want to aim for more and more and more. And that's not unusual. And there's this dynamic that young people often face. It's called freedom fatigue. It's like you have so many choices, but you don't really even have a way to go. Like, do I take that one or that one or that one? It's like there's no clear sense of purpose. It's like when you go into a candy aisle and there's so much candy, you wanted something sweet, but you can't figure out which one to pick.
Do you try it all?
Do you try it all? Do you try none of them? Or what do you do? Usually people get kind of frozen in that circumstance.
But
I think that's what happens. No, I think that's what's happened because when we were kids, we had 3 channels, and PBS, CBS, ABC, NBC. And you just kind of watched what was there. You didn't really care. But now there's like 500 channels. Seriously, I will sit there and go through 100 channels going, I can't find anything I want to watch. And I think there's so much to choose from. I can't choose what I want to watch.
That is such a trip. I've had that exact experience.
Do you think it would be good for people to just try it all if they can't figure it out?
You would be in front of the TV for the rest of your life if you were going to do that. So
I'm just saying for like in people's like life choices, if there's so many options on like what to do or anything, like do you think it's good to be like, well, just try it until you like or have?
Yeah, there is some truth to that. I do think there's a method in career psychology, which was you try to assess interest because interest is what you'd look for that person environment fit. So you try to assess interest, and if you can kind of hone their interest, then you can know the area that they should be trying out, and to have them go into those jobs So it kind of narrows what they're going to look at, and then they go into the job. That doesn't guarantee they're going to like a particular job or a particular supervisor or anything. And I always laugh with career psychology that when I took this test originally, my 2 top careers were attorney and broadcaster, like, broadcast news type person.
Oh, the broadcast I can see.
Well, I was like, at both at the time, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. And, maybe I would have liked, I think I may have liked law school. It looked horrid to me when I went through school. And I had friends in law school. I'm like, I never want to do that. And then, but, journalism is interesting to me, and I don't think it's that far from psychology in a lot of ways. So maybe. But nonetheless, psychologist wasn't up there. It was down. So, but I picked it, and it was the right one for me. I really wanted that, and I made that work for me. But here I am doing something like this just because I want to express myself like a broadcaster, I guess. Never really thought about that. I guess I'm pushing that. Yeah. So it's hard when the environmental instability, which is going on all around us, and I think some of that may be intentional to throw people off, because to make and I think I said this to you when I first met you. I think I said something, and you said, you said something. Maybe I said, "Are you going to vote?" And you were like, "No, it doesn't matter. Everyone's the same." And I'm like, "No, it does matter." And I forget what discussion we had. The bottom line was, I think that's exactly what people in power want. They want disengagement from the public. So engagement from the public, or having people outraged, or having people focus on things, is not what they want, because it pushes back on these corrupt intentions. Like doing the No Kings rally was a good example of pushing back on the corrupt intention. Did it stop it? No, but is it going to create more momentum? Yes. And that snowball will continue to grow.
But then what do you think would stop the corruption and what's happening right now? Because then if voting isn't really doing much either. I mean, not saying that it's not helping, or, that we shouldn't, but the people in power genuinely don't give a fuck about any rules or anything.
And not all people in power. There are good people in power. It's just that the people at the very top appear not to be among those people. And there might be good people in this administration. They just haven't reared their head. Do we know of, Tony? Do you know of good ones? I just don't know.
Jimmy Carter?
No. People who are currently in the administration who might be.
Oh, I think, oh my gosh.
I mean, a lot of people said Marco Rubio was going to be, but he's kind of ended up abandoning his previous beliefs.
Yeah. I think if anyone, Marco Rubio might have I might as well be here to see if I can keep something from going completely disastrous.
Off the rails.
But in the administration, it's no, because he's put so many people that in his administration that are so unqualified in almost every position.
Yeah.
I mean, Pam Bondi, I think, is a qualified attorney,
I was following her career in Florida.
Not
but
Florida.
She's from Florida.
Sorry.
And
she's
I was
such a
following
conservative,
She was bad even then. So it wasn't really a surprise.
No.
Well, I mean, I was actually surprised she was named Attorney General. I really was. But
he knew that she was going to do whatever he wanted. So.
Well, did you see the latest South Park, by the way?
Oh, no.
The latest South Park it featers Pam Bondi. It's pretty much a Pam Bondi episode.
Good.
And basically, every time you look at her nose, it has some brown stuff on it. And they're like, they you've got some kind of ectoplasm there. It appears to be fecal matter, fecal ectoplasm. And then she's under the desk. The presidential desk comes up with this huge wad of brown on her nose. Anyway, it's actually very, very funny, I will say.
Accurate.
Let's talk about the despair you feel and the despair I feel. And I'm guessing you feel, Tony.
Right.
I mean, my goodness. Despair means you still care. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't despair. You would just be disconnected. So having some despair actually isn't the worst thing. It's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. The things we don't want to land in are hopelessness. See, we're talking about instilling hope here with purpose, pathway, and presumption. There you go. But you want to instill hope, but hopelessness, helplessness, which is a belief you can't do something. That's the agency. That's a belief you can do something. So you've got to have that. You want to have purpose, and you don't want purpose, helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. That's like I'm just not of value. But the two big ones are hopelessness and helplessness. That often causes people to be self-destructive and act in self-destructive ways, or maybe act in other destructive ways as well. The cure is not escape. It's engagement. So we talked about that, keeping an appropriate level of concern. I was concerned after last week's show that I was too political on it. And I think this one takes the cake. This is a psychology show, but we're just living in really tough times. So you can't not help but talk about what's going on in the news. If there were, it's like trumping, so to speak, all the other news that's going on right now.
And I mean, it is what is affecting our mental health right now. All the things, the politics is literally what is affecting our mental health right now.
Yes,
from every decision that they're making since they got into that.
And we talked about that group exposure, that, emotions move through groups. And when everyone is feeling this way, it moves through the group.
Yeah.
So let's talk about rebuilding hope for you, Brian. Control what's controllable. The Serenity Prayer?
Oh, yeah.
Serenity Prayer, ask for what you can, excuse me, accept what you cannot change, change what you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Accept what you cannot change. There's some things you can't do there, but change what you can, and you've got to, in the wisdom to know the difference. That's just basically you be able to tell what's what. Act locally. Think about your square foot. Like voting in a local election is acting locally. Going to a protest is acting locally. Maybe volunteering, doing something like that. Maybe helping somebody an old lady with their groceries is acting locally. I mean, just helping someone else. I think if we continue to do good things for other people, good things will come back. So I think that's a very important thing. Also, another tip would be to limit the doom scrolling. We talked about that last week, and emotional overload. If you start to get into that overload mode, back off, because that's going to hurt you. Remember, with Yerkes Dotson, there's a whole, the appropriate level of emotion for any action. That when we get too overheated, we don't react well.
Yeah. So
we've got to pull it back into a more manageable range. Reconnect with others, have purpose through people. People are the key. If you are isolating, that's probably one of the biggest issues that's going to hurt people right now. Because if you're isolating, you might be watching TV or looking at social media, and it's just going to increase the rage and increase the fear. Those people get very fearful. Transform your anger into agency. You've got to have a belief that you can do something and do what you can do. And hope is a habit built daily. Remember, keep an eye on your purpose. Look for pathways through. That's what you can do. And you're going to presuppose or believe that you can get through things. That's having agency. Presumption.
Okay. Well, I hope those tips help people, that if they're feeling the same way that a lot of us are, with how to navigate work or personal life. I mean, we talked about it last week that it's like even dating, if you're not on the same boat, like, sorry, I'm going to sink yours, But it's just hard. It's hard times. And I feel like sometimes we don't give ourselves like big enough break to, you know, be like, hey, this is rough. You know, we're all kind of struggling in our own little way, one way or another, you know?
I think that's brilliantly said. We've got to step back and say to ourselves, this is a rough time. It's a rough time, and it's okay for us to be upset or outraged. It's okay for us to be despondent now and then. It's okay for us to have despair. That means you care. It's okay to have those things, but then we've got to look for our ways through, look for the pathways, you know. For me, it was, you know, talking about this today, even though it's a risk to talk about this. For me, it was going to a protest. For me, it's voting, but maybe different for other people.
Yeah, and I feel like I've read this in another book where everybody has their own way of protesting. We don't all protest the same way. Even if it's writing letters, knitting, a knitting club, you know.
That's right.
It's a way there's little ways of protesting against what's happening in your own specific way, you know. And I hate that some people either are guilted or feel guilty of not doing it a specific way, you know?
I agree. We can't do that to people. We have to stick together. We have to join hands and stick together. And everything everyone can do is what's important. You got to watch that children's show, Horton Hears a Who. And when what was her name? Cindy Lou Who? I can't remember the little girl who at the very end, they hold her up to the top and then she says, boo. And it was the very domino that helped everyone else to hear that the Whoville existed, like it was real. So anyway, you have to watch that show. It's basically how we all can play a role. And that's exactly what you just said. So every era feels like the end of the world to somebody, but every rebirth begins with someone who refuses to stop believing in the future. So hope isn't naive, it's courageous. Today's youth aren't broken, they're exhausted. And I understand that. They are exhausted. So our job as people to help the youth is to remind them the fire can forge, not destroy. So what's happening now can forge a new reality. And I use the image, the phoenix rising from the flame, to help us to know that something good can come out of this, even though things appear very difficult right now. Hey, I made a handout, Brian. That's a handout that's I'll put in the show notes, youtube.com/Dr. Greg. The show notes for this show will be, and this is show 96, that they can go and to, you know, find out how to have hope when things feel hopeless, essentially. We'll cover a lot of the things we talked about.
Thank you. And thank you again also too, because like you mentioned, this is a tricky situation for you to come on and like, you know, just be open about your beliefs and where you stand. And like, I mean, but it's kind of dumb if anybody is saying anything negative against what you're saying, it's just like, okay, well, I see you're an evil person because you're not doing or supporting or standing for something that is like hurting somebody else or evil or taking rights away from people. So if people can't see that, like, that's their own loss, you know. But I do appreciate you being helpful for the rest of the people. That there's a lot of people that don't have access to like mental health or like any tips or anything, you know, or have ever even been exposed to it. So I appreciate everything you do. Oh, I just said do.
Do. That's a good note to end on. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for joining us on Off the Couch. If you saw yourself in any situation or in today's patterns, if you saw yourself in the way I am, then take a breath. You're not broken. You're just human. And remember that insight's the first step. That's what moves the needle. So the action is what moves the needle. So find someone, share this episode with a friend. That would mean a lot to us. Rate, review, follow Off the Couch with Dr. Greg on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Hit us up on the socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Tony bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.